Can we please talk about the confidence myth that affects so many female leaders? My name's Louise Thompson. I'm an executive coach for female leaders, and for years in my corporate career, I thought I lacked confidence, but I didn't. What was actually happening was this. Gendered conditioning had taken over in my workplace, in all of the organizations that I worked in, sadly, where women, and particularly senior, ambitious women on the leadership track, often got caught, got stuck, and got buried under these gendered conditioning expectations that, surprise, surprise, were largely put in place by men. Because remember, too many corporate structures and corporate cultures were built by men for men. So if you're a woman, you are immediately subject to some of those assumptions, expectations, and conditioning that men have of women in the world today. Yes, even in 2026, I'm sorry to have to tell you. So what does gendered conditioning for women actually look like, and what does it mean? So gendered conditioning is a set of assumptions that are typically made even in progressive workplaces about the way that women might behave, might communicate, might speak, might work, may respond at work. It's gendered because the same questions and assumptions just aren't made of men. And it's conditioning because as women, we often don't see this for what it is. We think there is something wrong with us when actually it's the system that built it all, patriarchal, made by men for men, that is actually to blame. Let's use one of my favorite examples from my own career. So I worked in corporate for nearly 25 years. I was a director of corporate communications, and at my most senior, I had a role on the board. Pretty good going, huh? Especially for a 37-year-old. I'm not that young anymore. I'm nearly 50, but actually going through the menopause recently has opened my eyes to a lot of this stuff, and I can now clearly see it for what it was in a way that I couldn't in my late 30s. So when I talk about gendered conditioning, I worked in organizations that were often seen as progressive, but I also worked in organizations which were pretty traditional, by which I mean they were led by men for men, and the old rules, the old golf course rules applied. As in, if you were a man, you would often get preferential treatment. It might not look like preferential treatment on the surface, but beneath it, with corridor conversations, oh, see you at the weekend on the golf course or in the pub, or meetings were set for times like 7:30 a.m. or 5:30 p.m. as a matter of course, without once identifying or checking in on the fact that many, many employees, and not just the women, but of course largely women, we do largely bear the parenting, the mental load, as well as working, had childcare commitments to meet. And that happened to me so often in my corporate career. My fellow board members were usually much older than me. They didn't have children that needed to go to school. They were in the grandchildren phase of their life, and good for them. But it was very, very different from my own lived experience as a 37-year-old woman and mother of a 2-year-old at the time. I had to work around nursery drop-offs, nursery pickups, getting to a call at 7:30 a.m. in the morning or 5:30 p.m. in the evening, pretty much impossible when you consider at that time you've just done a really fraught drop-off or pickup, and now you're battling traffic to get your darling little one home. Other ways that gendered conditioning shows up. Let's imagine, and I don't have to imagine because this was my reality, let's imagine you are one of the most senior people invited to a meeting. But when you get there, you still hang around as a woman at the edge of the meeting room, and you just let all the men take their seat first. You think, I'll take what's left over, and if there isn't a seat for me around the table, that's okay, I'll just go and sit in the corner. These days as a coach, I advocate for all my female clients to take their seat. This channel is called Take Your Seat, because that's exactly what I want you to do. Because gendered conditioning, and that is the name for this almost systemic, often invisible bias that goes on in our workplaces, would lead us to believe that we don't deserve a seat at the table, in the middle of the action, even when we are the most senior people in the room. Here's another example of gendered conditioning you may not have realized for what it is. Are you routinely asked to do the birthday collection or a leaving collection for a colleague that has got a new job. I know I was, again, even as a very senior member of the team at director level. And it had nothing to do, by the way, with me wanting to be in an ivory tower and not wanting to get my hands dirty or get involved or connect with my colleagues. I was very happy to do that. But it was the gendered assumption that I would do that. And again, men were never asked to do this. So when you start to realize gendered conditioning, and I have a million more examples, I'll tell you one more before I go on to what we can do about it. Let's talk about meetings, and specifically let's talk about leadership communication in meetings. So if you are a senior woman in a meeting and you say something and you say it clearly and you are direct and you don't faff about and you're not softening your language and you're not putting a ton of caveats or apologies around what you're saying, you are often coded by men as aggressive, when in fact you are being clear, direct, and effective. The double standard you can clearly see forming here now is that, of course, when a man speaks like that, he is applauded for being clear and direct, and that's just what we need, Bob. A woman does it, she's aggressive. All of this conditioning leads to women starting to doubt themselves as leaders. It causes you and me and so many women out there to second guess our leadership capability and skills and experience and expertise. Crucially, not because we lose confidence, but because there's something much more worrying going on. And this is when we get to the confidence myth. So I started this video by talking about the confidence myth for female leaders. It's the name of my keynote. I am a speaker on women in leadership, and I coach brilliant female leaders all around the world. But I've gone through my own evolution and my own journey here in terms of women and confidence in the world of work. When I first started my coaching practice, I fully believed that confidence was an issue that women had, and I needed to help fix it as their leadership coach, as their executive coach. I even had a group coaching program at the start called the Confident Leader, because I so clearly believed that confidence was A, a woman's issue, and B, something that the individual woman had to fix about herself. Now, there is nothing wrong with getting some coaching and getting some support if you don't feel confident as a woman at work. Absolutely, I still coach on that these days too. But what I've learned is this: confidence isn't something that we need to fix in women. It's not the fault of an individual woman, and it's not the fault of women collectively in the workplace. This isn't some big design flaw that we come installed with as female leaders. But gendered conditioning will have you believe that it is. And that was when the penny dropped for me, and my own take on women in leadership and confidence for women in leadership started to evolve. It was recognizing that what had happened to me over nearly 25 years of corporate leadership as a woman was happening to women everywhere. These small, often almost invisible, sometimes unconscious signs of gendered conditioning. The fact that I was often asked to get the coffees in and men never were. The fact that when I approached my male manager about his succession planning and wanted a clear route to succession planning because I was his successor, he would just back me off and say, "Oh no, Louise, don't worry about that. Your work will speak for itself." Spoiler alert, my work didn't speak for itself. In fact, that same male manager went on to appoint a less experienced, less expert male colleague as his successor, all the while telling me not to worry about it, just keep my head down, just do the work, and it will all work out in the end. Well, it didn't, not for this female leader. And by the way, I was excellent at my job and I was excellent at delivery, which so many female leaders are. And then we wonder why we are not getting the executive level leadership roles that we deserve. And it's often down to this type of gendered conditioning, these assumptions that are being made about our capability, about our capacity, about our leadership identity that are incredibly and increasingly harmful to the female leadership pipeline. So my new approach to confidence when it comes to women in leadership, as a speaker, as a coach, I run workshops on this. And my core message for you as a woman in leadership, and for any organization out there that is watching this and thinking, yeah, we have a female pipeline problem when it comes to leadership, is this: women don't lack confidence as leaders. We've just been told that we do. And that is the confidence myth for female leadership. We are not born with an inherent lack of confidence as females in leadership roles. We are made to believe that our problem is lack of confidence by the gendered conditioning that goes on in far too many organizations, even those that see themselves as progressive and inclusive, by the way, because often they're the last ones to recognize there might be an issue here, a silent issue that is creeping in, and it is affecting our female leaders, but we're diagnosing it incorrectly. We are diagnosing it as lack of confidence on the part of those female leaders, instead of looking inwards at our culture, our leadership decisions, behaviors, what gets you promoted, what gets you noticed, what norms have we established that aren't norms at all. They are just norms for many men in the workplace. My example from earlier of meeting times. When organizations are open to understanding this and identifying what is going on, and when I speak to leadership teams, women's corporate networks, and the individual women themselves that come to me and work with me for coaching, that shift is what sets you free. The shift from the woman seeing herself as the problem that needs to get fixed. The woman that has second guessed her own confidence, her own impact as a leader, not because she didn't have confidence in herself, because she was led to believe that that was her problem, when in fact there were so many other factors around her leading to this unhappy situation where too many women are either leaving the workforce before they get to that leadership role, or aren't identified as worthy candidates for those roles because of the traps they unwittingly and unconsciously find themselves in. Traps that are set by the organizational culture and tone. My channel here, Take Your Seat, is all about this central premise. I am here to help women in leadership thrive, but that has to start with understanding why they are not and identifying what we can do about it. Follow me here for more leadership tips for women. I'm here, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram at Lead with Louise. Take Your Seat is designed for you. If you have ever second guessed yourself as a woman in leadership, if you're in an organization that you feel just doesn't value you in the way that you deserve, if you feel as if you lack confidence, but deep down you know something else is going on, if you would like to learn more effective leadership techniques and leadership communication techniques, but without the gendered layer that inevitably gets put into these topics on all the standard leadership programs that are out there, follow here and let's tackle gendered conditioning together.